All right, welcome everybody. I will just leave a couple moments for everybody to get logged in, and then we will get started. All right, just as we're waiting for everybody to get logged in, if you can hear me okay, please throw a message in the chat box at the bottom of the screen and let me know if you can hear me okay. Well, thanks to all of you for joining us for another one of our WESK webinars. My name is Josie and I am WESK's marketing advisor. If this is your first time joining, welcome. And if it's not, welcome back. WESK is currently offering free webinars every Wednesday on a variety of different business-related topics. You can check out our website at wesk.ca/events for more information on these and to register. As well, our virtual business conference is coming up and is in just 2 weeks. So every day from Monday, September 28th to Friday, September 2nd, we will be hosting awesome interactive workshops and engaging panel discussions. We do have limited seats available, so if you're interested, be sure to register soon. I'll be posting the link in the chat box once we get going here. So as always, this webinar will be recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing on our small business resources page at wesk.ca/services/resources. You'll also be receiving an email from me tomorrow with a link to that recording. So keep an eye out for that. Today, our topic is internal controls and is presented by Damu Prabhu from Deloitte, Canada. For those of you who are watching, you'll notice that there is a chat box. And again, please feel free to use that to let me know that you can hear us okay or write any comments. But please use the Q&A box for any questions you have as we go throughout the presentation. And Demi will address those questions at the very end in our Q&A time there. So with that, I will hand it over to Damu to start. Please begin whenever you're ready.
Hey, thanks, Josie, and thanks for having me to present this webinar. So let me just share my screen, and Josie, it would be awesome if you can confirm if you are able to see my screen right now.
Yep, that looks perfect.
Okay, thank you, and I'll just minimize this one. All right, so thanks, Josie, and good afternoon, everyone. As Josie mentioned, I'm Damu Prabhu. I'm a senior manager with Deloitte Canada, and I'm part of the risk advisory practice of Deloitte Canada. I am really excited to talk about internal controls as part of this webinar with you. Interestingly, I did present this topic at WESK in Regina last year, where we had a really interactive session on this same topic, and we had a lot of questions and a lot of interest in this topic. So I understand that compared to last year, this year we are in a completely different construct. So still really excited to talk about this over this virtual session, and looking forward to answering any questions that you may have on this topic. One more thing I also want to acknowledge that considering all the current developments around the world, completely recognize, completely understand the fact that the meaning of entrepreneurship in this world has now become very focused on grit, determination, and basically resilience, handling all those variables going around us. So recognizing that, I really appreciate you joining this webinar, and will do my best to do complete justice to this topic of internal controls and answer any questions you may have on this one. So in terms of the agenda that we have for today, as we have gone through the introduction now, we will talk a little bit about what are some of the myths related to controls. And then what we'll focus this session more around is, hey, what are some of the controls as a business owner that you want to start considering to be introduced? And we will go through some of those examples of controls. And again, we'll try to make this interactive where you can post your questions as a part of the Q&A section on the Zoom. And as Josie mentioned, we can look into those questions at the end of the session, and happy to answer those questions if you have any. So let's continue. And the overall session topic is on internal controls. And one thing I want to highlight here as we talk about this topic here is that internal controls are basically key for you to achieve any success you have with your business. And the reason being is that if you don't have adequate controls, there is always exposure towards your financials and your money being leakage or fraud potentially happening in the organization, in your business. And if there is a money leakage happening at any point of time, that is not helping you achieve your business objectives and be successful in your business. So as part of your business, it's safe to say that regardless of what kind of business that you are owning and running, the business will involve where situations where you are obviously handling money, you are holding valuable assets, and you are also interacting with a wide range of people. And those people could be your business partners, those people could be your employees, they could be your suppliers, they could be your customers. So with all of these, when you look at this holistically, there is so many different avenues where the need for having internal controls will be important to minimize any exposure to fraud, to put stoppage to any leakage of any finances anywhere, right? And what we want to kind of, what I would like to focus as part of this webinar is, it's not necessarily an overhauling thing. It's not necessarily really need to be a very complicated thing to implement controls, internal controls. There might be very small steps that you can take as part of your business, and that will help you in terms of helping you with more hygiene in terms of controls, as well as put the necessary safeguards as part of your business. So we'll look into more of that as we go through this presentation. So what's the overall myth about internal controls? So when I talk about internal controls with many of the business owners, including some of you who are also on this webinar, very consistent feedback that I keep getting is the fact that, hey, we are really a small business and we are really too small to even think about internal controls. I think, when we expand and when we grow our business, when we become larger than what we are right now, then maybe internal controls may be something that we may want to think about and introduce that as part of our business or as part of our company. But the reality is that that's not necessarily true. An example or an observation that I can provide is that, let's take an example where someone, a person A might be making a very nominal income right now, and that person may be in the habit of spending the money, and then the person may keep on saying that, hey, maybe when I have more money, when I'm making 2 times, 3 times, or 4 times what I'm making right now, maybe I'll think about saving money then. Maybe I'll think about making meaningful contribution to charity only after I become a millionaire, but maybe I'm not ready prior to that. But the reality is that the odds are very high. Even if that person ends up, making a lot more money, even say if that person is able to make $1 million sometime in his or her life, then because of that not being a mindset towards being prudent with money, because of that not being an habit, and because that not being part of that person's DNA or culture, right, in terms of the money spending, it's very highly unlikely that that person will change the habit and mindset and thought process to save more money, to be more prudent, and to maybe even help others. So when we talk about internal controls, when I look at this more from a standpoint of make internal controls a part of your culture in your business, make it part of the habit, and make it part of the business hygiene. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in the upcoming slides as part of this presentation. So let's kind of jump in directly into what are some of the examples of internal controls, and what is more pragmatic, what is more practical for your business that you can start thinking of adopting. And maybe some of these are already part of your business. Maybe everything is what is listed on this slide is part of your business. And if that's the case, then that's great. Keep doing what you're doing, keep improving this. But otherwise, some of the basic controls that you can think about is, as a business owner, just ensure that basically as much as possible you are signing all the checks, and not only that, you are at the same time not pre-signing any check, which basically beats the purpose of you signing the check. So if you are able to sign all the checks related to any payments that is being made as part of your business, what that will allow you to do is it will give you more visibility and more clarity and oversight, because you are seeing everything, because you are signing everything, basically what's going on. And I think this is even more important if you have multiple employees as part of your business. Obviously, if you are the only person, and if this is a solo business, then of course you'll be signing all the checks. There's absolutely no question about that. But if you have multiple employees, many times it's easier to either delegate this complete authority to somebody else and just not really have oversight about the money and cash flow in your organization. And and as the adage goes, that many times what I hear is, hey, I trust this employee, and that's great. Trust is a virtue, but trust is not really a control. So as the adage goes, trust but verify. And I think by having this simple hygiene of you overseeing all the money going out of your business and you personally signing checks, that will help you a lot in terms of having more oversight and control of your finances. So some of the other key points that I would like to kind of highlight here in terms of some very pragmatic controls is if you have multiple employees as part of your business, when your employees are possibly on vacation, at that point of time, it always makes sense that maybe you would have some other employee fill in for that person, or maybe you yourself fill in into that person, especially if this person is overseeing the controllership, or overseeing the cash disbursement or collecting money. If you or some other employee can fill in to that position when that person is on vacation, that will allow you or the other employee who is backfilling to really understand what's going on, and allow you to have one more round of validation so that nothing is uncovered which is not appropriate. So vacations is also a good opportunity where an extra due diligence can occur to see that if everything kind of ties in and fits well. The other concept is around segregation of duties. Again, wherever pragmatic, wherever possible, it's always recommended that if there are multiple people doing a similar job, then let one person handle one part of the process and let the other person handle the other part of the process. So maybe the person who is collecting the money is not the same person who is depositing that money in the bank, or maybe the person who is collecting the money is not the same person who is basically registering or maintaining your books. Again, wherever this is possible, it makes sense to introduce separation of duties or segregation of duties between your employees. And if you're a solo business owner, then of course it's not applicable. You'll end up doing, all the work, and separation of duties would not be possible in that case. The other control, which is more of a social control, is always a good idea to understand, to get to know your employees, understand their lifestyle, especially since, you are paying your employees, you obviously know, how much money they are making. And if you really find them kind of, contrary to what is an expected lifestyle, if you see them, jet setting, if you see them going about, if you see them something, out of turn in terms of, what an expected lifestyle is for a person who is making a certain amount of money based on working for your business, then that would be an interesting red flag to kind of just highlight about why is this discrepancy there. Maybe there is the discrepancy is there for a very valid reason, but it's always good to kind of have that visibility or oversight. Always ensure that any cash which is coming into your business, going out of your business, that is well recorded, so that there is a very clear-cut audit trail of where is the money coming from or where has the money gone out. So keep your books up to date. Have a system in place where this documentation basically exists. Always a good idea from time to time to do kind of do a surprise inventory count, do some surprise inspection, to do some sample sizing, to just to understand that, hey, is everything going on fine, or are there any discrepancies? So that is another small measure in terms of internal control that you can think about. And as I mentioned earlier, have a system where you have good documentation, good recording. That system preferably could be something which is an application or a software where you are doing your bookkeeping, and if you it could be your simple Excel file if that is what you're using. But at the end of the day, just have something which is more solid in terms of very detailed documentation from your finances standpoint. So these are some a few examples of very practical controls that we could think about, and we will look into a little bit more in the upcoming slides. So the key thing from a control standpoint is to minimize any risk of fraud. We spoke about a few controls in the previous slide, and these controls could be whether they are preventative or they are detective, or they might deter some fraudulent behavior. So an example of preventative control could be if you're the person who is signing every check for money going out of your business. So that's the preventative control, because nobody else has the authority to basically, disperse money from your business. A detective control could be if you're relying more on control, where you are doing spot checks of your assets. If you are doing random inventory counts, then those are detective, because if there is a wastage of inventory, if there is a misappropriation of the number of inventory counts, then the reality is that those are detected after an event or an incident occurs. So that's a detective. It's a lesser stronger control compared to having a preventative control. But you cannot always have preventative controls everywhere. As much as possible, it's good to have preventative controls, but sometimes you'll have to rely on detective controls. And when we talk about deterrence, and some of the examples of controls with deterrence is in your business, in your location, you may have surveillance set up. There might be cameras overseeing things happening in your business. So that could be a potential deterrent in terms of any behavior inside your business location. That could basically deter any fraudulent behavior. We'll talk a little bit more about why is it important to basically have a tone at the top and in the middle? Why is it important to have basically policies and procedures? But these are really important in terms of minimizing any risk of fraud from a control standpoint. And the third thing we'll also talk a little bit more in the upcoming slides is make these controls as part of your day-to-day activities. Make it a habit. Make it a part of your business hygiene. Have your staff accountable for their actions. For example, something that we have that you see here on this presentation is basically if you are reimbursing your employees for any expenses claims, then please have your employees basically submit appropriate receipts. I'll validate those receipts, so that way you are basically making it really clear that the employees need to be accountable in terms of their actions, and you are basically adding those rigors as part of your business. So let's kind of move on, look slightly more into some details of internal controls. And the number one thing, as we have seen on the previous slide, is it is really important to basically lead by example. And you being the business owner, you basically set the tone at the top. Your delegates or your managers, if you have multiple employees in your organization, they also set the tone for everybody else in your business in terms of being compliant and being basically adopting these controls. One personal and maybe even a professional example that I would like to share is in my job, I end up working with many team members. I end up leading a lot of engagements and projects for many of the different clients from Deloitte, Canada. And one thing that I've learned being a experienced senior manager is the fact that my team members basically observe more on my actions rather than basically my words. For example, if I just tell my team members, hey, you need to go above and beyond to provide the best client service to our client, and if I myself am not working hard enough, if they don't see from me that level of commitment to our client delivery, then the reality is that even they will not just follow my words, they will just basically follow my actions. And as a parent of 2 kids, one thing I've learned is they say that the more is taught than caught. So the more is caught than taught. My bad. And what it means is that I can say a lot of things to my children to do certain things, but the reality is that they will always mimic my actions. And if you are a parent who is on this call, I think you will basically acknowledge that is also an experience of a parent. So the same goes here when it comes to control. The same goes in here with you being a business owner, being a key person in your business, is if you don't basically adhere to these policies and procedures yourself, if you don't kind of enforce these and don't make your people accountable for their actions, then it is extremely challenging to have strong a control environment in your business. So the next key thing is it's absolutely important for if you want to thrive and grow as a business, it's absolutely important to have a very positive work environment. Of course, happy people equate to happy place. And one of my favorite quotes is from Richard Branson, where Richard Branson once said that, hey, if you take care of your employees will take care of your business. And that is absolutely important. So one thing that I would like to highlight here is that by having controls in your business doesn't necessarily need to have this thing equated with the negative work environment. this thing doesn't need to be equated into having a very cynical work environment. So it's at the end of the day, it's not a zero-sum game. It's important to have a very positive employee recognition. It's important to treat your employees fairly, have very clear roles and responsibilities defined for them, have very clear lines of communication between your management and staff. But at the same time, it's important to trust, as I mentioned earlier, but it's also even more important to verify from time to time. And that will basically help you to grow and thrive as a business. So we spoke a little bit about policies and procedures on the previous slide. So one of the things that would be helpful for you as a business owner is the fact that define some what can be called as a very backbone policies, and have those policies basically approved. So you can define very specific backbone policies which could relate to the delegation of authorities when it comes to contracting, etc. Who is basically negotiating that contract, have very clear policies, roles and responsibilities basically defined, have very clear policies defined as part of the travel expenses, defining the mileage rates, per diems, requiring your employees to turn in their receipts, and having visibility or inspection of those receipts. And the third example that we have here, this is absolutely important. So from time to time, I heard so many times where we have heard business owners complaining that, hey, I think employing that particular employee was probably one of the not so great decisions of that person. There have been so many instances where, unfortunately, you might have hired, and God forbid, a business owner may have had a situation where that person might have hired somebody, trusted that person, may not have done enough background check, and that person might have caused some harm to the business. Could be that person might have created some sort of a fraud with money, or might have basically impacted the reputation of the business by his or her action. So have very clear-cut backbone policies on how you are hiring people, and backbone policies. If you have to let that person go, what would basically constitute to that? Again, verify their qualifications, do the reference check. Social media is big when it comes to hiring. So one of the things that I would suggest to think about is if you are hiring any new employees, always a good idea to do a good scan of their social media presence. Many of the employers these days are increasingly scanning through Facebook, Twitter, and more importantly, LinkedIn profiles of their prospective employees or applicants, and using that opportunity to see if there are any glaring red flags or any issues that they are observing, running into maybe inappropriate content being posted by that employee, which you don't want to be part of your brand and your reputation as an organization and business. Any derogatory remark of any manner that you are not comfortable with your employees making out there in public. So these could basically help you to ensure that any new hires that you are employing, or even the employees you have in your business and organizations, those are up to the standards that you want and you are looking for from a business standpoint. And have very clear-cut policies on when do you want to capitalize the asset, when do you want to record that as part of your books. That is another example of what could constitute to be a backbone policy for your business. And the one key thing I would like to highlight here is that it's important to basically define those policies and procedures. What is also more important is how you are communicating these policies and procedures to your employees, so that this is not something that you are writing somewhere in your personal diary and storing it somewhere without your employees having visibility to these. Make sure that these are very clearly communicated. Folks are aware about what is do's and what is don'ts in terms of policies and procedures, and always have a zero tolerance of breaches or adherence to policies, and especially if something is considered to be absolute table stakes and you don't expect your employees to be non-compliant with those ones for your organization or your business. So the other thing from a financial reporting and activity standpoint, something that I would like to emphasize is it's always a good idea to basically establish a very clear-cut budget for your business. And from a budgetary standpoint, it's important to understand what are my fixed expenses that will be relevant for my business. Then what are those variable expenses that I need to account for? And sometimes there could be seasonal expenses, there could be one-off expenses. So it's important to kind of, when you think about budget, think about what are those different kinds of expenses to have a clear-cut budget defined. And once you establish a budget, it's highly recommended that you do a monthly check on how you are progressing against these budgets and how you are performing, and really understanding, why are these
Hi, Damu. I think we might have lost your audio there. I'm not sure. Maybe you guys in the audience can let me know if you can hear him okay. All right, just bear with us while we look into this here. Just give us 1 second. I think you're still muted there, Damu. Looks like you're calling in. There might be a certain button you can press to unmute. Sorry, I'm not sure of the button. Or just go directly from your computer and press unmute there. No, we still can't hear you. Try hanging up and calling in again, if you can. Sorry, everyone, for the troubles here. Just bear with us. All right, it looks like Damu is back. That's a great first step. Damu, I'm just going to post. You should have received the number, but I'll post another phone number for you in the chat if you don't have it. Oh, there we go.
Hey, Josie, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. We're back in business. Perfect.
All right. So let's can we give the credit to Murphy's Law for this one?
You bet.
Sorry, if anything can go wrong, it of course goes wrong. So my apologies again, and I appreciate your patience for continuing to being on the call. So Josie, let me share my screen again, and let me know if you're able to see it now.
Yes, that looks perfect. No, that's
Okay.
the life of virtual events nowadays. No worries. Take it away.
You know, my fear was that my 2-year toddler might be banging on the door of my office. So luckily, he's behaving pretty well so far. But too bad the phone lines weren't that graceful. So nevertheless, glad to be back. And I remember that before I got disconnected, I was talking about budget, doing a comparative analysis of your spending and having visibility, identifying any variances that you might be seeing, and basically keeping your financial statements up to date and having that visibility from a business as a business owner standpoint. So some of the other things from finance you may want to think about is the person who is collecting the cash could be a different person versus the person who's depositing the money. In many cases, what we recommend the business owners is that as much as it is possible, see if you could be that interface, basically handling the money. If you could be the person who has the control over the cash register, but in any case, unless you are a solo business owner, in any case, usually what I would recommend is that let the person who is collecting the money and then depositing that money into the bank account and also managing your books, let that person not be the same person. So think about how you can have some separation of duties or segregation of duties, so you could potentially mitigate any risk of fraud or reduce any financial exposure for your business. And one last thing that you'll see here is that it's just a general financial or business hygiene that only just make payments on the original invoices. If you have made any payments against the invoices, just mark it as paid, so that you can mitigate any potential possibility of paying the same invoice again. So that is a small step that you can take in terms of reducing any money leak in your business. So the next thing I want to drill down a little bit into a slightly more detail is about segregation of duties. So we spoke about segregation of duties in the previous slides in this presentation, but you can think about segregation of duties also from the standpoint of your information system. So if you are doing your bookkeeping using an application, you can think about, and if you of course have multiple employees in your business, then you can think about how you can separate their access in the system so that no employee has a complete access in these bookkeeping applications. So think about how you can grant only least privilege access in these applications based on their roles and their responsibilities, and also understand who can basically initiate a transaction, who can basically authorize those transactions. And the key areas obviously would be your cash disbursement, your cash receipt, as well as what is basically going into your general ledger. So think about ways about how you can have more oversight within the bookkeeping application itself, so that if there's a method where any authorizations or approvals could be enabled in these systems, that could be done inside the system. Or if not, it could be basically be done in a manual method, but somebody basically oversees and approves transactions versus the same person who has entered the transaction in the system. And it's important to just, we have spoken about roles and responsibilities in the previous slides as well in this presentation. So it's important to basically have a clear-cut org chart, very clear-cut reporting lines basically defined. So based on that, you can have segregation of duties enforced as part of your business, and that could be mimicked in your bookkeeping application as well. So without one area again to continue to not lose track about is, at the end of the day, you can have different controls in your processes, you can have different controls in your application, but if you don't have enough controls in terms of the physical access within your business, then there is obviously exposure of there's obviously financial as well as operational exposure to your business. So small things like controlling your physical access to your premises, controlling who is having access to your cash register. If you have computer systems where you are running your transactions or logging something related to your business, having enough safeguards to have physical access of those systems will be important from when we look and talk from a control standpoint. So making sure the doors, the desks, the filing cabinet, those are logged, your personal files, your check stocks, your contracts, and any other sensitive information, those are adequately secured. That would be a very small step which can make significantly big impact. And then some of the things you could also do is that you can implement systems that can report on an employee activity. For example, if an employee is logging into an application, you can basically have visibility into why is that employee logging in, what is that employee basically doing in the system. And based on my conversations in the past with business owners, one question that I keep getting is, hey, we only have one user account in this system or application that is being used for bookkeeping. So how can we basically have that traceability and visibility on who is doing what transactions? So something that I would recommend is, as much as possible, see if you can have individual user accounts to those applications and systems. So that way you have more visibility and traceability regarding which user has created what transaction, so that there is no any ambiguity in that perspective. And then we spoke some of the examples with deterrence that I have covered in this presentation in the previous slide is considering something like a surveillance systems, having alarms, having cameras, basically set up as part of your business premises, your business location. That will also act as an important control in terms of safeguarding your business. I'm just being mindful of the time. We still have 14 minutes to go, and there are a few more topics I would like to cover really quickly. And after that, I would love to spend some time answering any questions you may have. So it's also important to understand some good practices in terms of managing your inventory. Keep in mind that these inventory in almost every case is coming into your business because you're spending some money getting this inventory in your business. So you may want to be obviously be very diligent about these inventory, because else if these inventory is either lost or if these inventories are wasted and you have a lack of inventory turnover, then you are basically losing money in your business. So think about performing some routine checks to basically verify assets which are part of your business, and just keep a close tab on how you could keep a check on any wastage or lack of inventory turnover. So that might reduce any unnecessary loss of money, and that will also help you to continue to stay on track in terms of the budget, as we've spoken about setting up budgets and keeping track of budgets in the previous slides in this presentation. One of the last few things that I would like to basically cover is the concept of reconciliation, and this is very important from a financial standpoint. And being a business owner, I can completely acknowledge the fact that you may not be able to reconcile each and everything unless and otherwise you're a solo, if you're a solo person in your business. But something that you could basically start thinking about is, where can I do some spot checks? Where can I do some sample sizing in terms of reconciliation? Where can I reconcile to ensure that my bank statements are what is being reflected with my general ledger? Make sure that you reconcile the money being paid as payroll to your employees versus what the pay is supposed to be for your employees. Make sure you do some spot check reconciliations in terms of your supplier statement, especially in cases where if your suppliers have provided you some credit, have those credits been accounted accordingly as part of your recordings in your books. So, and these are some of the examples that you may want to think about from a reconciliation standpoint. Again, at least consider doing some spot checks, if not doing a detailed reconciliation, if that is not possible. But this would be an important control that will help a lot from a financial health of your business. And the last concept or set of control that I can basically, being a cybersecurity professional myself, I can keep talking about this all day, is about cybersecurity and what are some of the computer controls that you can think about. But here are some of the examples that I would like to highlight is, have strong passwords. If you are using computer systems, have strong passwords in your systems, so which are unique, which are known to you. As I mentioned earlier, see if you can have unique user accounts created for your individual employees who are logging into the system. Make sure that you have virus protection, antivirus software installed. Make sure that these are up to date. Make sure that they are running in their computer system, because we live in a day and age where ransomware, malware, virus, and basically cyber attacks being launched by these into your systems is very rampant and very prevalent. So these would basically help you a lot in terms of mitigating any risk or exposure related to those areas. And one last key piece of the puzzle when it comes to computer controls is basically having user awareness, right? This involves having a self-awareness yourself into keeping an eye out on any emails that might be a phishing email, which may not be coming from the right sender, and basically keeping and being aware of anything you are clicking in an email. So having that general awareness from a phishing standpoint, there are so many cases of robocalls, so many social engineering hacks which are which are employed by different adversaries. So having that self-awareness yourself and having that awareness with your employees, that would help a lot. And of course, at the end of the day, the chances are very high, very unlikely that maybe a prince from a foreign land wants to deposit money in your Canadian bank account, and he or she he wants your details of your Canadian bank account details. That is something that you may want to worry about and be diligent about from these cyber attacks, protecting yourselves and being aware and making that awareness with your employees. So with that, that concludes the things that I wanted to cover as part of this presentation. Again, my apologies for the technical issue with my connectivity, but at this point of time, looks like we have around 8 minutes, and I would like to answer any questions you may have. So feel free to pop in some questions, type them in the Q&A section, and I'm happy to answer them. So Josie, I'm not able to see anything in the Q&A. I don't know if you are able to see anything in the chat.
No, it looks like you covered all the questions already. I don't think we have any. I'll maybe just let everybody have another minute or so. But just while we're waiting for that, thanks Damu for the great presentation today. And thanks to those who joined us today. I know that you touched on cybersecurity a little bit at the end, and funny enough, our webinar next week is actually all about cybersecurity. So for those of you who are interested in learning more, you can register for that at wesk.ca/events. Otherwise, it looks like there are no questions, so I will let everybody go. Thanks again for tuning in, and have a great day.